Classical Romantic Stories of Pakistan by Dr. Asaf Riyaz Qadeer. Today's story is Sassi Punnu. The story goes back to the time when Sindh was ruled by the Umayyad Caliphate, and under them, some kings ruled their respective areas. One of these kings was Raja Daura, whose reign dates to the first half of the 8th century A.D. At that time Brahmanabad was a large city located near present-day Sukurori in Sindh. The name of the Raya of this city was Tania, while the name of Raja's wife was Mandar. The couple had no children and used to visit temples in the hope of having children, and sometimes even prayed to the yogis, Soldus, and fakirs. The Raja had generously distributed his treasures in the hope of a child. People would come empty-handed and return with money. Every night, both the Raya and the Rani would raise their hands in the court of God and pray. "We are the kings of the world, but we are beggars at your door. O God, grant us our wish." When Rani Mandar got pregnant, she started decorating the baby's silk cradle with strings of pearls and waited for the appointed time with counting pearls. One day the pearls fell from her hands. All the pearls were scattered on the floor. The maids kept picking pearls from the floor, but the Rani was worried about the broken thread. "These pearls of fortune should not have been scattered from my hand just like that." After the pregnancy was over, a daughter was born to them. The daughter was very beautiful and lovely, but like today, in the society of that time, the birth of a girl was considered unlucky. Everyone wanted to have a son. Next morning after the birth of the daughter, the king rode to the court, but Rani was surprised to see that he had returned a short time later and came to Sassi's cradle and sat down as if someone was sitting down at a grave. The Rani was frightened, as she knew that fathers of girls at that time often used to kill their daughters. So, she cried, sometimes looking at her daughter, and sometimes at her father. Seeing the Rani upset, the king finally said, "Our daughter is a disgrace to our family. What can I do about it? Astrologers, according to their knowledge, have said that when grown up, she will be different from the world, in love with a Muslim man. It will not only kick off the court glories but will also destroy the honor and dignity of the family. The stain is also in the moon." As soon as Rani said this, she fell at the feet of the Raja. "The error of the moon and the stars can be forgiven, Rani, but not of the human being. This is also a piece of the moon." The Rani would sometimes become faint and then regain consciousness while saying this. One does not strangle one's children with his own hands. So Raju and Rani started thinking of ways to avoid notoriety. After much deliberation, they agreed. Let the girl be drowned in the river. This is how the scandal that is coming can be avoided. Rani was ready to put the baby into the river, but the Raja was not ready for that. He consulted with his ministers and officials. They gave the same advice. After consulting with all the people, the king made a box of sandalwood in which silk mats were spread and the soft and delicate daughter was laid with bags of gold, and the box was pushed into the river. The Rani had frequent seizures. When she regained consciousness, the soft lullabies on her lips turned into sighs and groans. "Oh, my daughter! I have bid you farewell in such a unique palanquin, which will be carried away by crocodiles instead of potters." On the other hand, the box was floated in the river till it reached a pier near Vaunpur, which was a famous city at that time. Caravans carrying goods to other cities besides Thatta mostly passed through this port city. That is why there was a lot of commercial activities there. Caravans would come and go, especially from Kech and Makran. The caravan that came would camp there before going ahead, having rested for a few days. In this way trade caravans used to come and go and camp there. There was a washerman named Atta Muhammad, alias Atta, who was well known in the city, living in Blampur. His business was very large. All the rich and wealthy people of the city would get his services. He had employed about 500 workers. Coincidentally, Atta Muhammad was also deprived of the blessing of children and was sad day and night due to his deprivation. He prayed for fulfillment of his longing for children. He visited the fakirs and shrines of the saints. He also dished out charity to the poor, orphans, and the needy, but his wish had not yet been fulfilled. Atta was washing clothes at the washing stands on the riverbank when he saw a box drifting in the river. When it reached the riverbank, it caught his eye. He blinked his eyes and saw something rolling in the water like a colorful dream. The box with pearls and jewels had a wonderful glow due to sun rays fell on it. Atta jumped into the water in the name of God and pulled the box ashore. He opened it and looked at it for a long time. He could not believe how fate had helped a childless man like him with a parentless baby. How did God put a beautiful moon-like daughter in his empty lap all of a sudden? Who would have let this destiny flow into the river with his own hands? Atta did not understand anything. Even then, he would repeatedly hug the girl sucking her thumb and was overwhelmed with joy. How beautiful she is! When Atta's wife took the baby in her arms, her motherhood burst from her dry veins. The girl had an amulet tied around her neck with a golden chain. Atta recited Sassi's name on it and tied the amulet in a bundle with diamond pearls lying in the box and stored it in the storeroom as a deposit. Daughter, this is the trust for your youth. You would wear them when you grow up. Atta cooked food. The first meal was taken to the river, and after making a vow to God, he distributed the food among his relatives and then ate himself. Atta would say the same thing over and over again, today I have become rich and can sit in the gathering of brothers. Brothers, my sleeping destiny has risen. When Atta's wife pulled the baby and held it to her chest, streams of milk flowed in her dry veins. She felt as if some divine fruit had taken root in her barren body. The splendor of the palace began to play in the courtyard of a washerman. As time went on, Sassi's beauty doubled as she grew older. Growing up, Sassi turned out to be extraordinarily beautiful. Anyone who saw her at a glance would be amazed. As Sassi grew up, marriage proposals began to flow from the community, but when Atta looked up at her daughter's face, he wished he could find an angel somewhere who can give her daughter a suitable companion. I don't see anyone worthy of this girl. Sassi's fame spread from the huts to the palaces of the rich. Someone even told Raja Tanya that Atta's daughter was capable of becoming the queen of a palace. When the Raja's proposal came, Atta got nervous. Oh, God! Why are these rivers flowing upside down now? But Raja's wishes could not be disobeyed. Atta's wife bathed Sassi and dressed her in new clothes and put that saved gold amulet around her neck. He entered the palace with his daughter. As soon as the Raja looked at Sassi, his eyes were wide open. He thought that no one could get such beauty even in the palaces. The ground beneath his feet was velvety. In a state of insanity, he grabbed Sassi's hand, but as he tried to take Sassi in his arms, his eyes fell on the amulet around her neck. The ground began to shake under his feet. The Raja called the Rani from inside the palace and showed her the amulet around Sassi's neck on which he had engraved Sassi's name. That's it, that's it. Her voice trembled. The Raja's heart began to pound, but his memory was hesitant to believe that his beloved daughter could survive in the world despite being dumped in a deep river. The Rani felt as if it was not a matter of this world. She did not blink her eyes, lest the dream should disappear from her eyes. The Raja seated Atta beside him and asked him to uncover the whole truth. Oh, Raja! God had put it in my lot. It was placed like a silken thread in a box of pearls and the box was floating in the river. Atta then clasped his hands and told the whole truth and grabbed Raja's feet. It came out of the water like a water fairy. Long live the Raja! God above and Raja below, otherwise position does allow that this fairy would play in my yard. The Raja offered 101 golden coins to Atta and said, God's ways are wonderful, Atta. Whatever village you lay your hands on, you will be allotted, but give us back the splendor of our palace. The 16 years of the Rani's life were like dry leaves, and a bud of hope began to sprout in her heart. I can't repay your kindness, O Atta. Kindly give her back to the mother. Atta's lips were trembling. The voice was not coming out of his throat. Instead, Sassi said, Rani mother, I will be here whenever you order. but I will stay under the roof of the one who saved me from death." Thus the splendor of the palace continued to flourish in the courtyard of the washerman. At first, only God knew, then the eyes of the world also saw. Like air and water, Sassi would go to Raja's palace whenever she wanted, and when she came, she would enjoy a walk on the river bank. The Raja reserved a garden exclusively for Sassi. In it, Sassi used to swing with her friends and sing happy songs. Sassi had the blessings of the world. She called scholars and philosophers and expressed her desire for knowledge. Throughout the night, candles would be lit beside her, and she would sit in the candlelight and enlighten her soul with the light of knowledge. One day it was found out that a Ghaznīs, Afghanistan, businessman had planted a garden in the city, and he had made such beautiful pictures in the inner building of the garden that no one would have seen or heard of it till today. Sassi had a craving for knowledge. Along with her friends, she immediately reached the garden of the Ghazni trader. Seeing the garden, her soul pounded. The doors and walls of the building smelled all around. There was a scent of flowers and an array of colors. Outside, was a variety of plants, and inside, an artist was painting with a beautiful mix of different colors. Sassi looked at the pictures and paid tribute to his art. One of the pictures was such that Sassi was taken aback. She forgot to blink her eyes and lost her mind. Sassi was shaken by her friends, so she folded her arms and asked the artist, "Oh artist, whose image is that?" The artist replied with a smile, "The form was made by God and the image I made. And this is Prince Punnu, the son of Sardar Ali Hoot of Kech, present-day Balochistan, Pakistan." Punnu. The same sound started coming out from every single hair of Sassi. Sassi, who had come to appreciate art, was trading her destiny. Paying full price of her heart, she saved a picture of Punnu in her eyes. In Bhampur, outposts were set up on the river banks. Law and order fell in the domain of Sassi. However, she issued this order to the caravans coming from Kech. Although the lives and property of merchants will be safe, they will not be able to return to their homeland unless they invite Prince Punnu of Kech. As chaos spread among the merchants, they sent a messenger to Kech. When Ali Hoot, the chief of Kech, heard this, a wave of grief and anger ran through him. The feel of this anger and rage reached Punnu somehow. He called the messenger in solitude and listened to Sassi's love story. The narrator said to Punnu, "It is difficult to find a beautiful girl like Sassi, not only in the city of Bhampur but also in Kech Makran. Whoever sees her once, becomes hers." When the young Prince Punnu heard Sassi's praise so much, he longed to see her somehow. He was handsome and young, but he had gone crazy after hearing people praising Sassi's beauty. As soon as he heard her praise, his desire increased. He made up his mind that no matter what happened, he would see Sassi. He consulted his special companions. "Do something so that I could also see Sassi of Bhampur." Friends commented, "A caravan should be prepared which will be full of musk and amber, and you will join the caravan as a trader." Punnu liked the suggestion. That's the decent thing to do, and it should end there. So he got permission from his father and asked to prepare a caravan. The father gave permission against his will because he did not want to separate Punnu from himself. The caravan contained musk and amber and other perfumes for trade, and Prince Punnu was involved as a merchant. When the caravan reached Bhampur and camped there, the whole city was bathed in perfumes. Fragrances wafted through the city, and the news of the caravan spread throughout. "A trader has come from Kech Makran to trade in perfumes." Upon hearing this news, people started going to the place where the caravan was staying, to buy musk, amber, and other perfumes. The news reached Sassi and she also went there with her friends. Punnu was waiting for that moment. When he saw Sassi, he just stared. She was far more beautiful than what he heard about her. Prince Punnu was just as beautiful. The two looked at each other, their eyes widened and both were stricken at first sight. Punnu, who had come to trade in musk and amber, traded his heart, and Sassi, who had gone to buy perfume, had sold herself, without any price. Sassi came back home but her heart was full of Punnu. Everywhere she looked, she saw Punnu. Neither food nor drink tasted good. There was no peace in sitting or lying down. She was restless and impatient about what to do. She did not understand anything. At last, she spoke her heart out to one of her close friends and said, "Suggest someone makes Punnu mine forever." Listening to her, the friend started thinking. A suggestion came to her mind and she went and told the whole story of Sassi to Atta and his wife. She can't live without Punnu, and this relationship isn't bad either. Punnu is princely, young, beautiful, and most importantly, Sassi's choice. Atta Muhammad replied. Punnu is a foreigner, and his caste is not known. So how can this relationship be confirmed? We can't wed our daughter out of community. When the Sassi's friend saw his talking, she hurriedly said, "I have found out. Although he trades in musk and amber, he is also a washerman by caste. You can try it out. If that's the case, call him. We'll see." When Atta said so much, she first ran to Sassi and told her the good news. "Sassi, the door to your good fortune is about to open. You asked for Punnu. So he's going to meet you." Then she went to the Punnu and explained it to him. "All you have to say to Sassi's parents is that you are a washerman by caste. If you want to get Sassi, that's the only way." On the one hand, she taught Punnu, and on the other hand, assured Sassi's parents that Punnu belonged to the washerman caste. She then took Punnu with her to meet Atta and his wife. He examined Punnu for a moment and then gave him a large bundle of dirty clothes and said, "Go wash them." Punnu was put to a strange test, but he had to endure the greatest hardship to get Sassi. The ruler's son, who had grown up in comfort, reached the pier carrying a bundle of dirty clothes. He had never done anything like that in his life, so how could he wash so many clothes? But there was no other choice. It got worse while washing the clothes. His hands were injured, but clothes still could not be washed clean and many were torn due to lack of experience. He was terrified that Atta Muhammad would see the torn clothes and know that I am not a washerman. When Sassi learnt about this situation, she too became upset, but then a trick came to her mind. He sent a message to Punnu through her friend. After folding the clothes, put a gold coin on the bottom of each cloth so that those whose clothes are torn do not mind. The Punnu did the same and placed one gold coin at the bottom of every apparel. Thus, when the washed clothes were delivered to the owners, no one complained about the clothes being torn, but everyone was happy as they had received the gold coins. Even if someone's clothes were torn, he got more money than the price. Thus secrecy of Punnu remained intact and Atta Muhammad got convinced that Punnu was a washerman by caste. So he accepted his relationship with Sassi. Punnu and Sassi were both very happy in their place that their plan was coming true and they would be together forever in a few days, but before they could get married there was another obstacle. The obstacle was that during this period a goldsmith's daughter fell in love with Punnu and said, "I will not allow Sassi to get married to Punnu. I will marry him myself." She went to Punnu and accused Sassi of being wicked and not worthy of him. It was customary in those days to go through the fire to prove one's innocence when someone was accused of being immoral. Sassi was also asked to go through the fire to find out if her character was good or if the accusation was true. Sassi knew that the accusation against her was based on jealousy and that she was innocent. So, she got ready immediately. When she passed through the blazing fire in perfect safety and was not harmed, everyone became convinced of her purity. Atta Muhammad immediately began to start preparations for Sassi's wedding. Sassi was his only daughter and he wanted to fulfill all his wishes. This was the first and last marriage in his house, then the wealth given by Allah was unbounded. The friends who came with Punnu also participated and celebrated the engagement rituals. They thought that after getting married Punnu would go to catch Makran with Sassi, but he gave up the idea of going home and decided to settle down in Bambur. The caravan of Punnu waited for him for a few days. They were tired of living in a foreign country and now yearned to return home. They thought that Punnu would stay in Bambur for a few days and then would agree to go back, but he did not seem to have any intention of going. They explained a lot, but Punnu had decided to settle there permanently. The caravan also included Chanyu, a brother of Punnu. He tried to persuade his brother but of no avail. Eventually, the caravan was forced to return to Makran, where Chanyu informed his father, Arijam, of the situation and said that Punnu had got engagement with Sassi and would remain there after marriage. We explained a lot to him but he did not listen to us. The father became very upset when he heard this. Punnu was the youngest of his brothers and his father loved him dearly. His separation was unbearable for him. He immediately sent a messenger to Vaunver and sent a message to the Punnu to return home. When the messenger reached Bumper and saw that he was washing clothes with other washermen, he was surprised to see this and approached him. "Sir, this work is against your honor. You are a prince, go back and rule your homeland." He also delivered his father's message, but Punnu flatly refused to return, saying, "Go back and tell my father and brothers to forget about me and do not expect me to return. My homeland is where my beloved Sassi is." What could the poor messenger do? He explained as much as he could but Punnu did not budge. When Punnu did not listen to him, he too returned unsuccessfully. When he came back and informed Arijam about the situation, he lost his balance. In his old age, he had to endure separation of his beloved son. He looked as if he had been sick for years. He would shed tears in memory of Punnu day and night, and seeing his condition, the three brothers of Punnu, namely Chanyu, Hoti, and Naughty, consulted with each other. "We must do something for our old father who can't even travel now. His condition doesn't seem good." They became angry, mounted their camels and reached Bumper. The whole city was shining like a candle. They went to Sassi's garden where Punnu resided. At the flower celebration, Sassi's friends were chirping like doves. The brothers of Punnu tied their camels to trees outside the city and went inside. Going inside, they met Sassi and Punnu with great warmth and, using sweet words, said, "We have come to share our brother's happiness." "I welcome you," Sassi replied, and at the same time ordered to make best arrangements for them to eat and drink. In this way, the three brothers were well cared for. In the evening, the brothers of Punnu held a wine party and said, "We will also celebrate the joy of marriage for 3 days." Though, they were enjoying the hospitality of Punnu and Sassi, but they had not forgotten the purpose for which they had come. Whenever they got a chance, they would explain Punnu and tell his father's condition, that he was very sad because of you and he always remembers you. They even said, "If you don't go back, it will be difficult for our father to survive." But all their efforts went in vain. Punnu was never ever ready to leave his new world. He told the brothers to give up their effort and tell the father to forget about him. The three brothers became silent after hearing such type of blunt answer again and again. They started thinking of any special and secret way to take him home. Eventually, they coined a conspiracy to kidnap Punnu and forcefully take him back to Ketch Makran. One night as the party was going on as usual, the three brothers were having a drink with Punnu. They stayed up late talking to each other. The brothers of Punnu were very careful in taking the sips of drinking. They drank very little but gave Punnu full glass repeatedly. They mixed sleeping pills also in the last glass of Punnu. It was customary to drink up to the last drop of the last glass. Therefore, there was no room for doubt even in the heart of Punnu. So as soon as he emptied the glass, Punnu fell into a deep sleep. Being too late, Sassi had already went to her bedroom in another building saying goodbye to Punnu and his brothers and had slept with her friends, whereas Punnu had to stay with his brothers. When Sassi's eyes opened in the morning, the darkness of the night was crying in front of the sun. The canopy of Punnu lay empty in front of Sassi like a taunt's wing. As the night wore on, the brothers, in a state of drowsiness, had mounted the drunken Punnu on the camel and fled towards Ketch. Sassi got up in panic and started looking for Punnu in the palace, but had Punnu been there, she would have found him. Suddenly she thought, "Of course, his brothers have kidnapped him. I already had doubts about their intentions in my sixth sense." As soon as she realized that, she started screaming like a crazy person and ran here and there. Hearing her cries, the servants gathered, the parents also came, and began to console her, but it was as if she had lost her mind. She kept shouting, "Where is my Punnu? I'll look for Punnu." Screaming in the same way, she left everyone and started running towards Makran. Her dears tried to stop her and explain, but she did not listen to anyone. She ran to the desert. The family chased her too far and then returned disappointed as the Sassi was running towards Makran screaming Punnu, 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 like a mad one. Sassi's friends also sighed and ran after her, but they could not follow her last steps. Sassi alone was running crazy through the desolate desert, dangerous hills and ravines, ups and downs, crooked paths, pointed rocks, and hot sand. She did not know where she was going, nor did she know where to go. There were only soft voices of her footsteps and loud voices of Punnu, Punnu coming from her mouth. Bare feet Sassi searched for the footprints of camels and reached nowhere. It was noon of summer and the sun was shining in full swing. Her throat was dry from intensity of thirst. Her feet were injured. Still, she was running, panting and trembling. Her courage was now turning to despair. Each time the love of Punnu encouraged her and she began to move forward again. The necklace that Rani, mother, had given was hanging around her neck. She didn't know when the strings of the necklace broke and the pearls started falling in the sand. She remembered the moment of destiny when a string of pearls was broken by her mother's hand while decorating the cradle at the time of her birth. As soon as she remembered what her mother had said, a sigh came out of her heart. Mother knew my destiny at that time. She stared at the pearls that had fallen in the sand, and then she began to search for the footprints of the camels. Like Sassi's scattered thoughts, the sand of the desert was spread out. I am the trust of the desert, Sassi said to herself. Infinite water, river water, kept me safe in its palm like a trust. Now these deserts will also keep my love safe like a trust. Sassi felt as if flames were coming out of every hair on her body. She started shouting even louder, Punnu, Punnu, and her limbs began to burn in that fire. In the same way, she traveled on the hot ground and traversed dangerous paths for about several miles and wandered in the hills of Pub, an area in Balochistan province of Pakistan. Her thirst was so intense that it was difficult for her to take a step. She fainted as she walked. There was a cry of water on her lips and she fell to the ground in a state of semi-consciousness. On this occasion, nature took pity on her, and a spring of water burst forth. She quickly drank the water. She regained her consciousness and rested there for a while and set off again. Tradition says that the spring is still there today in the form of a small pond that is always full of water and never dries up. Sassi got refreshed and began to run again, and just 10 to 15 kilometers further down the mountain path, her feet were badly injured. It was difficult to go beyond. Once again, she felt thirsty, but the pond was far behind and it was difficult to go back. She walked the mountain path, while a shepherd saw her from a distance. He wondered who that woman was that wandered around in that desolate place. He approached her and saw a beautiful young woman standing in front of him. Sassi looked at him and asked impatiently, "Didn't you see my Punnu?" The shepherd was charmed by her sight. He replied with a smile, "You're looking for one Punnu. There are thousands of Punnus in the world." He said that and wanted to take her with him in bad faith. Sassi judged his intention, but who could she call for help in the desert? She was caught in her misfortune. She said to the shepherd, "O wretched man! I am dying of thirst and you are being fascinated by me. You must have fear of God and quench my thirst." When the shepherd heard this, he ran to his flock to get some milk. He thought that if she could quench her thirst, perhaps she would be willing to quench his thirst. As he approached his flock, the unfortunate Sassi prayed to God so that she could be saved from that trouble. She begged to God, "O helper of the helpless! O hearer of the cries of the oppressed! Help me in this time of trouble. I am the entrustment of Punnu. Let not my sanctity be tarnished." In this desolation, you are the one who can hear my cries." Allah accepted the prayer of helpless Sassi. At that moment, a crack appeared in the rock, she sank into it and it closed again. Coincidentally, a furrow was left out. When the shepherd came back with milk, he was very upset because he could not find anyone there. He looked around and when he saw the rock in which she was lying, he got frightened on seeing that sight. He immediately fell in prostration and asked Allah for forgiveness of his sin. "O God! I am a sinner for my bad thoughts. Forgive me. You are the forgiver of sinners." It is as if the heart of the shepherd became disgusted with the world in his youth. He felt as if he would forever flicker on the grave of the strange traveler like a grave lamp. He set up a small stone fence around the final resting place of Sassi so that the visitors could know whose grave it is. On the other hand, the three brothers took Punnu to Makran. They had tied him to a camel and were running the camels because they wanted to reach to their father as soon as possible. Somewhere along the way, Punnu regained consciousness. When he tried to move, he found himself tied to the camel. He opened his eyes and saw that his brothers were taking him with them. He realized that they had brought him unconscious. He asked, "You guys tricked me. Where are you taking me now?" But the brethren did not answer, rather began to run their camels even faster. "I will not go to Makran. Leave me. Let me go to my Sassi." The brothers did not answer him, nor did they want to answer him. Punnu tried to set himself free, but it was difficult. His brothers had tied him up very tightly because they knew that if he got free then it would be difficult to take him with them. By this way, they brought him back to their father. Arijam was very happy to see Punnu, but when he saw his condition he felt very sorry. Punnu was repeatedly saying, "Leave me alone. Let me go to Sassi. I'll have to go to Sassi, otherwise I will die. I will embrace the death." The father was afraid that his son might die in Sassi's separation. He tried to persuade him for a few days but to no avail. Finally, he said to the other sons, "Take him with you and bring Sassi along anyway as early as you can." The three brothers rode the camels with Punnu. When they set off, the father reiterated, "Look, bring Sassi with you anyway. And come back as soon as possible. Don't worry. That's what will happen." The sons replied reassuringly and left for Vaughanpore. They wanted to reach their destination as early as possible to bring Sassi with them. They wanted to please their father, but Punnu was in a hurry to get to Sassi. If he had wings, he would have flown there immediately. Ever since he was separated from Sassi, he had been tormented by every moment. On their way, when they reached the place where Sassi was buried, an unseen sound stopped Punnu. He pulled the reins of the camel and looked around. Suddenly his eyes fell on the fresh tomb from which piece of scarf had come out. Coincidentally, the shepherd who had built Sassi's tomb also came over at that time. Punnu asked him, "Whose tomb is this? And why is this piece of scarf coming out of it?" In response, the shepherd wept and told him the whole story and explained that such a beautiful woman had come there crying alone. The unfortunate woman was in a very miserable condition and the grave belonged to her whose scarf was left out. Even when she was dying, she had Punnu on her lips and she entered the valley of death looking for him. When Punnu heard that, he started crying helplessly. Then he went to his brothers and said to them, "Wait a minute, I have to pray at the grave." He went back to the tomb and looked up to heaven and prayed. "O reuniter of the separated, O hope of the hopeless, give me my Sassi." Tomb of Sassi Punnu at Lasbela, Balochistan. He was praying when suddenly the grave opened. He prostrated and took off all the burden of his heart and put it at Sassi's feet. "My brothers deceived me, but as soon as I regained consciousness, I returned to fulfill my promise." And the dagger he had used while rioting with his brothers, pierced his chest and he fell into Sassi's grave. The bewildered shepherd began to shake like a flickering lamp, covering the grave. In this way, the true lovers were reunited forever. The three brothers of Punnu were shocked to see what had happened. They stood there in tears, recited prayers and rode back to Makran.